Yeah, so I just wanted to wrap up on that national side. I think he raised the point that was present already all the way at the beginning of there are large demonstrations, and of course we know Serbia, we remember Otpor, which was very impressive national protests with a lot of political influence. Are we seeing kind of a revival of that, so a protest movement going into a toppling regime? How big do you think the chance of that occurring is? And then we wrap up the national side and we talk a lot more about the European side that we already started, of course, engaging in. So can somebody engage with it? Maybe you have some of the some of the notes that Nevenka brought.
I made the notes about them, but first of all, what Predrag was saying is so important that he said they have the leading parties have almost unlimited time on the national frequencies on TV. So, and he was describing canvassing from door to door and on the streets. So what does it mean? They can actually have successes in relatively big cities, opposition, while Serbian elections absolutely also depend on not urban places,
rural, regional.
Yeah. And then you see that there is no match.
That's why somebody mentioned they have some chances in Belgrade to maybe win, but not everywhere.
Absolutely. Big cities are always the chances where opposition can do well because of this canvassing and the national frequencies. And in Bosnia, Kosovo, Serbia, I don't watch TV a lot, almost at all, for years now, but television is the media where they do, they have TV on all the time from the moment, and they excuses always, I need to know what the weather forecast is. You're like, I have a field to do, but basically television is there to annoyance of all of us. It's always on. And this is how the elections are won, actually, by this sort of default position that you're listening. Vucic saying how he's saving them. He was saying something, and I'm going to give you compensation for energy. I was listening to him some last winter, and I just thought, from your inheritance, from where are you going to give people money? For budget, from the tax money they paid to you. But this is what then they say, he's good to us. This is this paternalistic leadership. This is so essential and different than Western type of leadership. And paternalistic leadership is, he's not always so smart, but and he's sometimes too severe, but we probably deserve it. We have been naughty children, like your father beats you up and you say, well, he does it because he wants the best for me. And this is transported now to political authority and leadership, and this is where this endurance comes from, which is actually heartbreaking. But it works like this. So they are winning just because they have access to this megaphone for 6 million people.
Thank you. And maybe Geert, if I may, having a protest movement as the basis for an opposition force to rise and topple a regime, do you see that pattern potentially playing out next week?
Well, I think there's a reason that we are having the election in winter. Because the fact is that this protest movement was very successful. I mean, it got a lot of people onto the streets. But you do that in summer in Serbia. You don't manage to do that in winter time. So I think that there are still a lot of people remembering these protests. There will be a lot of people voting for this. I think that there is a real chance in Belgrade to see some change. But the huge numbers that they had in summer and the momentum that was there is no longer. And I think we have to be aware of that. I do not expect an overall election victory of the opposition. I do expect that these, as you see, the microphone that is spread out through TV, and I think also you cannot work against that with just protest alone. You need more than that. I do think that a lot of people are very fed up with Vucic. So I do think that that is creating the potential for these protests, but it's not going to be enough now. But maybe in time.
Okay, that's a prediction we'll write down, and we'll call you after the 17th to see whether you were right. Nevenka, you disagree?
No, I just want to add something. I don't think you young people who are probably not born even in 1990, happening. But Otpor was not domestic grown mass movement. It was externally financed and motivated. Yeah, that is simply so. You know, so I'm not saying that it was it did a great job, and one of them survived politics until now, and this is Čeda Jovanović, who is still a member and goes alone of his Liberal Party to elections, and he's the one who is and for NATO and for EU membership, for normalization, and he's for sanctions against Russia, just to tell you about this. But you know
but
what?
You're mentioning it because you're saying that the protest movement from
tell
this
you
summer
why.
was homegrown?
Yeah,
Okay.
and why? What's the difference? I've never seen him threatened and fearing as much as, and it started with Rio Tinto, local people protesting this potential devastation of Stara Planina and Jadar Valley because of lithium that would be exploited by some, you know, Anglo-Australian company to detriment of people who are going to lose their way of life. And it started already in 2019, and it never stopped. And it was getting bigger and bigger. And for the first time, Vučić really fears for his power position, because, you know, power from the street is, as every politician will tell you, it does not leave you untouched. So, and this is happening. So even if the summer momentum, I think the last protests on Fridays were sometime in July, because, you know, Belgrade was emptied and so forth, etc. But the problems that they tackled and the problems why they went on the streets have not been remotely resolved. You know, and this was not anymore about external threat. It was not anymore about Kosovo being Serbian or not. It was the people who say, look, we are obeying citizens, tax-paying citizens of Serbia, and you cannot provide safety for our children. And the primary task of every state is to keep citizens safe. And they failed to do that. And this resonates now on all sorts of levels. And even if Vučić wins, his victory is not going to be any sort of certainty, because Serbian infrastructure is actually in a shambles at all levels, and he's going to have a huge problem. Maybe it will be better for him personally not to win anymore, because, you know, any new problem might be of a bigger impact on people, on the safety and everyday's life of hardworking Serbian people.
Thank you, and I think we've learned a few things. Of course, elections are usually about the everyday, the everyday problems and the everyday life of people. We're talking about infrastructure, about inflation, about safety, and not necessarily about the whole region. I think that's one thing that we take away from now, which is great to understand. And also, whether the opposition or the current government will win, we may be here next year again. But now I would like to open up more to the regional discussion. Unless Thijs, it seems like you want to add something.
Yeah, but you said we might be here again. But that's actually not something to laugh about, because the fact that elections are so frequent in Serbia is not because there has been a major conflict in government. Because there was not a major conflict in government. It was not because there was a clear decision that had to be taken and it required elections or whatever. No, it is because President Vučić actually almost on election eve of the previous elections announced these early elections. He said, I will call early elections or something like that. I was monitoring the elections the previous time.
Predrag was mentioning it. That's important to have election monitors everywhere.
Yeah, but I don't want to go too much into that because citing from our report does not make anyone really happy. I think, I want to give a little bit message of hope, because I think Geert is right in his prediction, and there are two things I want to say about that. Because if even with all the manipulation of the media, with the vote buying, with the uneven playing field favoring the incumbent, if Vučić will lose compared to the previous election, but still be the biggest party, if you lose even having this advantage, that's a big blow. And the second thing is that I think we need to look a bit further than the next elections. Because I do speak with Serbians in smaller cities, in smaller municipalities, and they are not focusing on these national elections. And indeed, like Geert said, they are not focusing on the normalization with Kosovo. They are working in grassroots in their municipalities on environmental issues, trying to build grassroots movements, not having the ambition to become a national political party tomorrow or the day after, but to work gradually, conquering not political power per se, but trying to do things, good things for their municipalities, and they gain seats in these local elections. And they may also want to unite in a bigger movement at some point. That is, I think, where the change has to come from within Serbian people.
Now, in the interest of time, we're going straight from within the Serbian people together, which can make it more difficult, or should we have some countries joining first and then others? And Serbia, of course, is one of the more difficult discussions of accession. So how do you perceive Serbia, and therefore also the elections coming up, as a key player in those regional discussions?
As I said already before, Serbia, as the biggest country, economic powerhouse, if you want, of the region, could potentially be leading the region closer to the European Union, leading the region into the European Union. However, unfortunately, the advantaged position that Serbia had, because Serbia was actually one of the most advanced in the reforms at some point during the negotiation period, but in the last decade we have seen also backsliding and even stalling of the negotiations up to the moment now that we are effectively in a frozen situation, more or less, and that's a pity. And I want to clarify also my position, and I do that also regularly when I speak to members of the parliament or other representatives of Serbia, because I don't know what they will say about what we do in the European Parliament, and we do our job and we try to do to the best also in the interest of Serbia. But I'm also a friend of Serbia. I'm not going to let me tell, and that's what happens, saying these critical things is an enemy of Serbia. That's typically how people talk about you. If you do a negative report on the election observation, it is being qualified as, oh, it's just an opinion. That is how you are being dealt with as a representative of an institution. It is not just an opinion, because it is the OSCE, the European Union, and the Council of Europe doing independent monitoring there and establishing these facts. It are facts about media access, about minutes of media coverage, about the access to the media. But that is how it's being done. But I'm not going to play that game, because I am also a friend of the Serbian people. I want Serbia to be part of our community of values. I hope it will one day happen. But to your question, yes, the difficulty is that this will not be a easy process with a clear agenda. It's currently being debated a lot, also in the European Parliament, next week in the European Council also. The accession, there's a Western Balkans summit also prior to the European Council. And as I said, I agree with Geert that we have to take a little bit the spotlight away from this normalization. It would be beneficial for all of the 6 countries to focus on their own relationship also with individual countries, individual member states in the European Union. And as for Serbia, yes, it would help a lot if Serbia also would focus more on itself and not on supporting, for example, Mr. Dodik in Bosnia, who's, like Nevenka also said, undermining the unity of Serbia, the constitutional unity of the country.
Serbia, or you mean Bosnia-Herzegovina?
No, in Bosnia Srpska, Republika Srpska.
Yeah, so he's undermining
Serbia
Bosnia.
is helping, is supportive to Milorad Dodik, and Dodik in Bosnia-Herzegovina, as leader of Republika Srpska, is undermining the constitutional integrity and unity of Serbia. Of Bosnia-Herzegovina.
That's what I meant. Yeah, okay.
There I went wrong. But it would help a lot if also Serbia would focus on itself. And we are not asking the impossible of Serbia, because we are not asking to stop importing Russian energy tomorrow. The funny thing is, we didn't ask that from Moldova. But the difference between Moldova and Serbia is that Moldova said, yes, we have a problem because we need that Russian energy. We cannot do that from one day to the other, but we want to be part of that value, the community of values. We want it. There's political will. And that's what I would like to see. Political will to actually move forward instead of what we've seen the past decade.
Can I then ask Nevenka for her assessment of the political will, having analyzed all these programs?
Thank you, because I was in a homework the whole morning.
Exactly.
Imagine that I couldn't tell you what I came up. Just to give you a short summary of positions in a party programs of Serb parties. So Vucic's party plus 4 other parties which are on his list say for EU membership but not NATO. Ivica Dačić, SPS, former Milosevic, for EU but without turning our backs to Russia and China. Vojislav Šešelj, never EU integration, the only alternative is BRICS. Milica Đurđević and Boško Obradović from Zavetnici Dveri, no EU, no NATO, BRICS. 5th list is movement for renewal of Kingdom of Serbia, and another one is Hope for Serbia. They say, we are against EU, but we are for Europe, cooperation in economic, commercial, cultural, academic fields, in something they call European economic space.
Oh, like Switzerland and Norway.
Yes, exactly.
I see the likeness already.
Yeah. And interesting thing.
It would be fantastic in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Yes.
So listen to this. Hungarian party that is now coalition partner of Vucic is for EU. Serbia against violence is for EU. And then Muslim Croatian minority parties are for EU and full membership of NATO when possible. SDA Sanjak van Sulejman Ugljenin, this is sort of brother or sister SDA from Bosnia, and for EU and NATO. Together for future is combination of Montenegrins, Yugoslavs, Hungarians and Croats. They are also for EU.
Did you say Yugoslavs?
Yeah, Yugoslavs are now like, they have even a party. Oh, wait for this. This is for the end, just amazing. And then Vuk Jeremic is for European economic space, like Switzerland and Norway, you rightly said. And 12th, Good Morning Serbia with former President Tadic and Sasha Radulovic from Enough is Enough, and movement for abducted babies to join them, which is a serious problem in Serbia, but interesting that they are now politically active. Yes to EU, and Radulovic says also EU negotiations are okay, but not EU membership.
Okay. So I think that's enough. I don't think we can absorb more information than this
is
list.
Interesting. There is one party, it is 14th, it is for ties with Russia against independence of Kosovo, and another one is Ruska Stranka, Russian party of Slobodan Nikolic. They are for collective security of Russia and Euro-Asian Union and so forth and so forth. So you see the whole spectrum when you, and I think it's representative what really lives among Serbian people. So I do not think you would have consensus for EU membership as you would have had 10 or 15 or 20 years ago.
But it sounds like the majority of the votes will go to pro-European parties, like that at least mention they want to join the EU, no?
Small parties, they will win probably 3% to.
But almost all of them, you said they are pro-EU.
No, in the beginning, yeah, at the beginning, sort, yeah. Vucic's list is for it, but not for NATO.
Okay, but that's already like 40%.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think Geert wants to. You're giving the microphone the other way. So you were saying, okay, I want to jump in here. And can you also, when you finish responding, touch a little bit upon how you perceive Serbia's role in the region, which is kind of the core question of this second panel.
Yeah, so I think that the big thing is here, so the first party, right? What is the actual position of Vučić here? I mean, I think that his policy, the way that he's doing things, is showing that he's not actually interested in joining the EU and very happy with staying in the status quo and collaborating with China and Russia on different things, with UAE if that, for the airport. In other ways, there is basically a position there for him that is in between everything, and he doesn't really care about EU membership, but he still needs to have it in his party program.
So sorry to stop you here, but like this reminds me of, because we just heard the word Yugoslavs, like this was already a little bit what Tito was doing, right? Some strategic ambivalence to be friendly with enough different people to be able to divide and keep your kingdom intact. Is that something that still lives as a political strategy, that strategic ambivalence?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there is a long history of displaying powers, and you could go into it. There's very interesting books written about this. I don't think that Serbia actually has the capacity to make due with what it actually wants to present itself as. It is a regional power. It is important in the region. And Vučić has been using it to appeal to nationalist sentiments abroad, not as strongly as Milosevic, but he's still doing it. And it also still holds an important key to whether there is destabilization in the region or whether there is more cooperation. I mean, I think that the whole region is only economically viable if it actually joins as a whole. And that Serbia plays a key role in that is very clear. And currently we are not seeing a situation in which that is really happening. We don't see that there is a choice for Europe and there is a choice for economic development. But we have to also be clear, the European Union doesn't have completely clean hands in this either, right? When it comes to lithium mining, it looks like the European Commission is actually supporting the lithium mining, and that's not going down very well with the public. So does that mean that we are, as the European Union, then also creating a problem here?
Yeah, I think the whole waiting room for 20 years was already enough of not having clean hands as the EU. So that's, of course, part of the discussion. But you mentioned something interesting. You said it makes sense to integrate the region in its entirety. And I can imagine some people would listen from North Macedonia or Albania thinking, oh no, like, don't let us wait until Serbia is ready, because we are almost ready and we've been waiting for so long. Why would you want to have the entire region going in one big bang rather than having a differentiation there?
I don't think you would want to have that path as one big bang, but I think that you have to have a realistic horizon that actually the entire region would enter the European Union. And that comes together with actually providing the economic investment that is needed to make that possible.
Right.
Currently we are seeing some of that coming from the European Union, but I don't think that it's enough yet. I do think that this growth plan that is coming is a big step, but I don't think it's enough yet. But yeah, it's...
Okay, I'm gonna open up to the audience. We have about 20 minutes left, maybe 15 minutes of Q&A, and then we give you some final thoughts to share. So who has a question about this more? Of course, you can also ask a question about the first panel, but we're opening to what's the relevance for us. Okay, the gentleman over here. Your name and question, please.
My name is Stefan, and my question is how did it go from like under Yugoslavia, like the communist ideology was very anti-nationalist and internationalist, like we're all equal, we're all comrades, and then how did it like kind of flip on its head? Now it's the complete opposite. Everyone is like nationalist, no one can get along with each other. Also during the Yugoslav wars, everyone was committing genocide.
Okay, now you're going pretty far.
Yes.
What's your question?
Like, how did this like completely flip around?
And this is the 15-minute panel, right? Thank you for your question. So who would like to pick this up? I will just add to the question, like when you go to, because of course we as FMS, we are with the PvdA, Labour, and we would go as like socialists and Democrats, and if you say the word socialist, and a lot of post Eastern Bloc countries, then it's already like quite tainted. So there is a major switch. So can you explain that switch?
So, you know, when you look into terms of paradigm, then you mentioned actually two important paradigms that we apply in social sciences to understand complexities or realities. One of paradigm you mentioned is ideological paradigm. And it's not too difficult to explain how it went on. Another one paradigm is consensus. So you were talking, and you also mentioned this, you know, we grew up in a post-war Europe with anti-fascist consensus. Then we had social democratic consensus. Then we moved to liberal consensus. And then after liberal consensus and after, you know, failure of states and societies in the communism, big question was what now? What is the consensus that we as leaders can win your vote? And the consensus was nationalist one because all these states needed and wanted their own separate states. So if you want, if priority number one is to carve your state boundaries, then national consensus is there because you need to take care of your state formation and statehood. You know, so for that you needed going from communist or liberal democratic ideologies, now we are talking about ideological paradigm, you needed to go to some other ideology that will give you tools to understand or to reduce the world that fits your ideology. So what you did is, oh, what is the nationalistic ideology of Serbia? Oh, all Serbs in one state. Who are the Serbs? Who speak this language, have this religion or whatever? And then Croats, you know, and what happened in the war, the clash of these nationalist consensuses concentrating on creation of the state clashed, you know where? In the territories where these state borders actually overlapped by 2 or 3 parties. And the crimes were more extensive and severe there because it was actually fighting for this little western or whatever eastern southern border. Mm-hmm. So actually you have here 3 paradigms that help you understand what is going. And now they have some sort of states, although one of the problems with the EU integration of all these countries that we mentioned now, including to a certain extent Albania, but certainly North Macedonia, Kosovo, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, is that many of these states among themselves have borders issued as an open political question.
Yeah.
So apart from all these other things that we are talking about, you're looking at them and say, guys, how can we take you seriously when you cannot make up your mind what is the priority of your politics? Fighting about some, you know, few kilometers of Danube border with Croatia and Serbia still haven't resolved. You know, and these are these sort of clashes of paradigms that sometimes are very difficult to tell apart.
Is it also the case that the more you tend to have to define yourself as a people within certain borders and a certain nationality, the harder it becomes to yield powers to like a Brussels monolith, which is hard to understand and feels quite threatening to the identity you've been building up?
Absolutely, but you know, the problem also is, problem is also because these politicians who came in power based on national or nationalistic consensus have no alternatives. They, you know, only these parties, I was reading from the list, call themselves liberal or socialist of this and that. Oh my God, they would never end up in a faction in a European Parliament of social democrats because they are straightforward nationalistic if you read their programs. You know, so they have not forged any really social consensus, and this is how now society and these mass protests react to their power holders. They want a different consensus.
Maybe it's a good time for Thijs to turn to the camera and explain to his friends in the box that they should be joining an S&D group. I saw you respond to this. How do you perceive this in approaching countries in the region? Do you also encounter this issue, like fighting for priority between Brussels and the clear need to define the boundaries and the nationality that they've been relatively recently found themselves in?
Well, it certainly distracts a lot from also the real concerns of day-to-day concerns of citizens in all of the countries, because this is what dominates the news every day. These are the discourses what dominate. I get asked sometimes by media in any of the countries to comment on something that happened with the EU, etc. But that usually serves again as then to ask to the other side, what is your comment on that? So it's always ping-ponging back and forth, but this debate is hardly ever about what is happening in what should happen in the countries. It distracts a lot. And on that point, I wanted to come back to what Nevenka also said, because also to maybe again try to bring some hope also in the evening, because I personally always have been very principled about the fact that this membership and the criteria, of course, are important, the reforms, and also I'm very much against second-rank membership or 2 circles or 3 circles or whatever, what have you. But we also have to be realistic, and in the interest of uniting Europe, in the interest of fulfilling our geopolitical mission, which I'm convinced of that this region should be part of our European family, I became less principled. I'm open to even now the concepts of staged accession, the idea also promoted by the current DJ Neer, the growth plan, trying to quickly give an impulse to all the different economies, maybe even trying to create some kind of a common market already in the region, which has failed. The Open Balkan Initiative has failed to that extent for now. But these ideas, I think, are good. They are good because they will help to bring the countries at a higher level in terms of the economy, and it could also work as a kind of stimulus, because if you, for example, reform certain sectors of your economy and get access to the internal market with these sectors, with which we are actually experimenting without calling it that way in Moldova and Ukraine. Because Moldova and Ukraine got access to the internal market without us calling it that way, but it happened with certain products.
Yeah.
That could serve as a trigger, because what will the effect be? It will improve the lives of people. It will actually generate more economic activity, also experimenting with things that we have experimented during COVID. We had green lanes between North Macedonia and Greece because it was good for the transport of much needed goods. Why not do more of that, so that citizens that are now becoming more skeptical about the European Union will see the benefits in their daily life and will see actually some positive elements. I think that is maybe an avenue to go down.
I think a very important lesson that the more you talk about nationalistic issues, the more they will become the center stage in the politics. I want to see if there is any other questions. Yes, so over here, and then maybe a response or another question. So would you like to come forward, please? This is about as far as I can make it.
Hi, I'm Teresa Sondman, actually a former colleague of Geert, but I work in Dutch education nowadays.
So you're here to disagree with him?
As always, we love that. Yeah, actually, I'm very interested in your whether we could hear your perspective from an international relations point of view, because actually, when I hear your what you just said, it also makes me think of it actually means the EU is losing power in a global sense. We also see our relations with the US becoming a little less straightforward than it used to be maybe 20, 30 years ago. We also see that China has been making very large investments in the region. We also see, of course, the dependence on Russian energy. So in that sense, can we understand Serbian politics nowadays in this international relations perspective and the shift of powers?
All right, so the geopolitical context has changed a lot since we first started talking about accession. So how does that play into that discussion?
Well, first of all, on the economic side, I mean, despite the messages that are being circulated, but I'm convinced that if you really look at the facts, that Serbia in the long run has much more to expect from ties with the European Union than from BRICS or keeping close ties with Russia. That's for the long run. But on your question, I think that can you help me a little bit because how you started your question?
International relations perspective.
Exactly. So I think that the relationship of the geopolitical agenda of the European Union, this European Commission started in 2019, said we are a geopolitical commission. And that was a time in 2019 when a lot of people didn't even know anymore what the word geopolitical meant. Now we do. Since the Russian war of aggression, everybody is geopolitics is important. But my analysis of that geopolitical commission is that if you are really serious about your geopolitical commission, then first start to get your act together on your own continent. And that is my frustration a little bit with what we have seen in the past years, in the past decade, when it comes to the Western Balkans. Because if you look at that region, it's totally surrounded by EU. So I always ask people the question, but what is your alternative then? And I don't mean alternative for immediate joining of the region, of all the countries. No, but the alternative to think at least, or have a strategy about linking that region closely to the European Union in whichever way or form, to our community of values, to our family of democracies. I do not see an alternative. It's completely surrounded. The alternative is always a continued destabilization in that region. And therefore, I think that indeed the point of investing and also making clear, look, this is what you get when you do business with China. You get a strangle loan, which you can actually not pay back, and then you have to give up your harbor. And yes, when you do a relationship with us, you get maybe conditions on democracy, on reforms.
We're going to insert the rule of law.
Well, yes, because not because we want that. That is also a mistake that is being made in our debates on Hungary and Poland. I am not imposing anything on Hungary. The European Union is not imposing anything on Hungary. We fight for the rule of law in the interest even of the Hungarians who voted for Orban.
Of course.
Because it's our rule of law. It's not just the rule of law, it's in Hungary. No, this is our European Union. Without rule of law, without these values, it's useless to talk about trade policies or about climate policy. We need that rule of law. But I'm back to the region. I think that this is a major task next to making sure that Ukraine wins the war, and that we can also link this region to the European. That's our geopolitical challenge for.
And so even with the geopolitical shifts towards US, China, you would still say this is the real alternative for them.
But that means that you have to step up, because we do spend a lot of money in the Western Balkans, but we need to make sure that people actually on the ground feel that is also happening, see that it is coming from the European Union instead of the plane that landed in Belgrade with the Chinese flag next to the plane and a minister. But the European Union is typically very bad also at public relations in terms of making visible what we actually do. I have even heard recently that Serbia actually admitted that the European Union is their most important, by far, trading partner, and that they need also to develop that. I acknowledge that. I agree with that. We are in agreement on that.
I wanted to give Geert the chance to respond to his academic opponent. And also I have a question from Mr. Vukic still lingering, and then we are about at 9:30 already. So Geert, if you can.
Yeah. No, it's from our NGO days, actually, when we organized youth exchanges together.
No, it's not an academic debate, it's an activist debate.
Oh, yeah, well, we had all kinds of debates.
Okay.
But, yeah. I think that when it comes to geopolitics, we have to be aware that we should mainly use this as something to probably reform what's happening inside the European Union, because I think that a main reason why this, or one of the main reasons, not the only main reason, I mean the democratic backsliding is also there, but the other main reason is that the European Union has not been in a state where it wants to absorb any more new members. The Netherlands is a prime example of that. We have not been a constructive partner in the EU accession process since we have the accession of Bulgaria and Romania. Ever since basically we have been on the back seat and have been taking a kind of a position that we really don't really want it. And if we are not the only ones blocking it, then we will join the force that is blocking it, like what happened with North Macedonia, and which was blocked by France and with support of the Netherlands.
The exception was Ukraine.
Yeah. So that is interesting that there is a potential now in Europe to unblock this and to actually create some momentum for this perspective. Although we haven't seen this happening yet.
Fragile potential.
It's a very fragile potential, and yeah, currently I think there was a letter to the Dutch Parliament which I've been reading, and it shows some signs of promise, but not enough to actually make a big difference.
But it will be on the table of the new parliament in the coming months already, so they are at least prioritizing talking about it.
They are talking about it.
Right now, yeah, exactly. Coming to you, Mr. Vukic. Was it a question or another response?
Yeah, it was comment. When I listen to the panelists, I get the impression that there are some doubts and dilemmas about Serbian foreign policy orientation. But I can tell you that as a civil servant, that there are no doubts. Of course, there is no alternative of our region than EU membership. And I know how hard we here in the embassy in The Hague and also in other Serbian embassies in EU member countries work on this to achieve this goal. And it wouldn't be possible if there is no political will. And I will just mention that, for example, Serbian Minister for European Integration has visited the Netherlands twice in the last 6 months, and she had a very good conversation with her Dutch partners. So yeah, that is the priority. Yeah, it is the case that we didn't join the sanctions, EU sanctions against Russia, but unfortunately we don't have time to explain more our Serbian position on war in Ukraine and everything, but it doesn't change the fact that it is our strategic foreign policy priority. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so.
Yeah. So thank you very much, and I think the tenure here is also to want to welcome you to the EU, at least in somewhere in the coming time. I was looking at the time, and it went a bit quicker than I thought. So I would like to thank all the people who asked questions for the interaction. And next Sunday, we'll be sitting on the couch with a beer or whatever else we're drinking, looking at the results. So for us, sorry?
It's the 17th, 1 week.
Yeah, that is next Sunday, not this Sunday. I'm not going crazy, am I? I will be sitting on the couch either way. So what, just in a minute to close down, what do you think we should have in our minds as we see the results coming in? What would you like to give the audience in terms of a lesson or a consideration that will make their voting experience, or their election observing experience complete? Geert, you first.
Well, my advice would be to go see it with a Serbian person and actually try to understand what's happening there. Because
well, that's what they're here for. Like, we try to understand what's happening.
I mean, I think it has a very profound impact on your life if you live in Serbia and you see this election happening. And I've been much less hopeful in the past years, and I'm a little bit more hopeful currently. So.
Thank you very much, and also for joining the panel, of course. Nevenka.
Just cliche, the first law of sociology is whatever happens is possible.
Whatever happens is possible. Oh, that's a very quick minute, and thank you very much as well.
Well, then I will say that I also will look with very great interest to the first preliminary report on Monday of the election observation mission, because there will be 6 colleagues of mine observing the elections like I did the last time around. Well, I think it's always interesting to hear the first observations on what actually happened according to the observers on election day. But I share the assessment of Geert that probably there is maybe can draw some hopeful signals from this election result. Who knows?
Okay, let's always try to maintain hope, and for now we've been able to learn a lot from you as a panel, and also from you representing, maybe all 30 of us can sit at your house and will at least be watching with a Serbian person.
By the way, we will have elections in the embassy. We are organizing.
You have an election thing?
Yeah. For Serbian citizens living in the Netherlands, we are organizing elections, so around 530 of them registered for the elections, so we will have in the embassy vote.
Okay, well, you're actually really involved. It's great that they can do that here from the Netherlands. For all of you coming here and asking questions, thank you so much for your dedication of coming here and for your interest in the region and in the country, and for listening and asking your questions. So how about a round for everybody, the panel.